Welcome to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd, and on our program today, we're going to be checking out the many benefits of raised beds. You know, there are many gardening benefits to having raised beds. You'll enjoy fewer weeds, you'll have better water retention or drainage, depending on what you fill it with, and you might save a little bit of that strain on your back. So here to talk to us tonight about all of this is Nebraska Extension Educator Terri James, UNL Assistant Director of Dining Services Pam Edwards, who's also a master gardener. Yeah. So the fun part about this is all of the experience both of you have with raised beds, both building them, filling them, planting plants in them, and deciding that that is a different ball game than doing all of that in ground. You want to start by talking about that?
Sure. So we've, for several years, we've been talking about raised beds. We have raised beds. We've showed them on the show many times in the Backyard Farmer Garden. I have raised beds that I've showed them on the show in my own backyard. Lots of times people tell us that they struggle with landscapes and they struggle with vegetable gardens, especially in the ground. And one of the things that we really tell them that to eliminate some of that is to use a raised bed. So we want them to succeed, and if that's really how they're going to succeed, then that's really kind of the option to go to. But more and more people are moving this direction. There's lots of different types out there that you can either build or buy or those kinds of things. So, and you know, especially people that are getting older, bending over sometimes isn't as easy anymore. So having those 32-inch high beds is oftentimes a benefit.
Well, you know, also, Terri, I think one of the issues associated with raised beds is people who want to garden in a space where maybe the soil is poor or, you know, contaminated. I know we've talked about that on Backyard before. Or they want containment so they don't have something that is so out of control that they have no idea how to manage it.
Often with our more urban people, especially Omaha, they have some heavy metals in their soil. So oftentimes they can't garden in the ground. The mitigation to get rid of all that is just way too much for a homeowner to deal with. So going up and above and then bringing in good soil that they can grow in, then that really helps with that.
You know, we actually have a question, I think, maybe even this week for Backyard Farmer about using plastic for the exterior of the raised bed or lining the bed with plastic. And, you know, the question is plastic safe, or will that release whatever plastic releases that you're not supposed to put in your body into the soil and therefore into the vegetables? What do you think?
I did get that question. I have not had time to look that up. I don't know for sure what plants will take up through those plastics. That's definitely going to have to be something that we're going to have to do a little research on. But I do know that lots of people have lined their beds that will help keep some of that moisture into, especially if you have wooden beds. A lot of people are going to that kind of corrugated metal. So then that eliminates that plastic issue. Those metals are all safe for the plants. Plants won't take anything up out of those metals. So you know, kind of just depending on what you want and how you feel comfortable doing whatever you're doing, then that's kind of the options that you can go with.
Well, and I know also you mentioned 32 inches for a height. Some people go just a foot or so, which is enough, I assume, to be able to get up and over, unless they're the tomatoes, Pam, that you were talking about that turned into tree trunks. So let's talk then a little bit about the interesting situation with the university and dining services.
Yes. First of all, I just want to say we wouldn't be doing these raised gardens if it weren't for all of you in Extension. That we at the university had a garden that we started in 2017, and it was okay the first year. We had tomatoes and squash and beans. No, we didn't have. Yes, we did have some beans and peas and cucumbers, and it went okay. And then the next year it wasn't so okay, and then the next year was COVID, and it was then 2 years of a disaster. It became a jungle. And so we got out there and we hacked away and got all of the jungle material out and then said, what are we going to do with this? We don't want this to happen again. So I said, I know who to call. And I called Terri, and she came and took a look at it. And the first thing she said was raised beds. And so we just said, great idea, perfect. And then the next thing that was really helpful is that she said, ask us, is what's your goal? And we kind of looked at each other and said, grow plants. So, but it's a really, really good question because what it's turned into from going to tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and all those is we're going to focus on herbs and have it be directed toward, we have a new executive chef and really directed toward using it with our recipes and all of that. So, but we wouldn't have gotten there had it not been for Terri and her recommendations. So I really thank Extension and Terri for all of that.
Well, technically, a raised bed is just a container, and she is the queen of containers.
Oh, that's true. That is very true. So
let's go back then to the goal, because again, people will ask us, what should I plant? And the question is, what do you want to eat, or what do you want to do with it? Do you actually use the produce, or did you? And you mentioned you're going to for the herbs, which is a little different ball game, but you actually use them in Cather?
We did. Yeah, we had cherry tomatoes, and we used it all that we could. Yeah.
And what was the reaction of your audience, which of course would be students and staff and faculty?
Yeah. You know, I think people really expect local type produce anymore. So there are some that are really in tune with that, and we tried to, put signs out so that people are aware of what it is. So they're very appreciative of all of that, and the population of students that are coming more and more have been living with local, so they're very aware of all of that. We started a local program in 2006, and that wasn't student-driven. It was, we recognized it, but it's all changed, with local. So,
which is again way cool, because if we can help people understand that you really can grow some of your own food, either for your own consumption or to help somebody else who is in need, and you don't have to have a jungle in the backyard in downtown Lincoln or Omaha or Kearney or wherever. That's really excellent.
yeah.
I know yours just went in, right? Literally just went in.
We are in the process of it right now.
Right.
Of layering. Well, actually, we're in the process of collecting branches, which are all over Lincoln now,
Right.
And getting that part of it. But yes.
So your yours are built out of what, and how many do you have?
Well, it's a company, and I don't know the exact material. It's kind of a metal. It's very light to hold in there. We have 3 kind of a rectangular, and then 4 24-inch diameter circles.
Circles.
So so they're
really
manageable.
Yeah, littler.
That was a big thing. We wanted to not make it too much at first, so that we can get a handle on what we were doing and make it successful.
And are they deep? Are they 32? Or they're shorter than
17.
Hers are 17.
So seating height.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
So a little bending, but not all of that bending.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. And so I'm thinking in terms of herbs, and one of the ones, of course, that people either love or hate is mint.
Yes.
And I can just imagine how beautiful it is to start with, and how the pollinators love it, and how if you can keep it in there in one of those round ones, you'll have way plenty for use, and not so much that the entire east side of the city campus is now a mint garden. Yeah. So let's go then to, what do you put in that raised bed? Because we get the question, can I use my topsoil? Can I just go dig up soil? Can I dump stuff from my containers from last year? How often do I need to change it or flip it?
So it's going to depend on how big your raised beds are and how deep they are. So most raised beds are going to start out at about 8 inches, and then they're going to go up to 32 inches or a tabletop. So depending on what that is, it's going to be depending on how much you're going to actually put in.
Yeah.
So some of those smaller ones, you can go with just, potting mix. You can go and get bags of potting mix and fill it just like you would for a container, a flower pot, if it's not going to be very big. And a couple of Pam's, some of the smaller circle ones, she would be able to do that with. The bigger beds, however, I usually recommend that you do a topsoil compost mix, and that usually seems to be the best for these raised beds because you're actually kind of treating them like in ground. So you really want that kind of topsoil in there to kind of really help bring in some of those nutrients and stuff, so those plants have that a little bit easier than if you're just using potting mix, because potting mix isn't going to have those nutrients for the plants. So a 60-40 is usually what I say for topsoil compost mix. And then for this one, we went ahead and we put some cardboard down the bottom. That's going to help keep the weeds from coming up. You're going to have to dig and kind of break that soil so you won't have a hard pan on it. And then we're doing kind of what they call that hergoculture, where you put logs and branches down, and that kind of covers about the bottom 40-ish%. And then that actually starts breaking down there and kind of helps hold that moisture, but it helps as a filler. So you're not actually filling that whole 3 yards of soil that bed's gonna need. You're only filling about 1.5 yards. So it's gonna save you a little bit of money. It will eventually break down. All beds, you're going to have to continually add compost and soil and those kinds of things to amend it each year, just like you do your ground beds. But it's going to save you a few dollars.
Well, and ours in the backyard farmer garden that we looked at, there are no branches in the bottom of ours, right?
Those were no branches. This concept, I think, is a little bit newer. I think because of the big trend and the movement of these raised beds, people started asking, I can't afford this. This is way too much. How do I get this? And especially people who live, in an urban environment, how do they get it, how do they get 3 yards of soil?
Right.
Like if you can't get it delivered or something, that's a lot of soil to be moving. So
right.
And you and I know how much 10 yards is to move too.
Having done that.
So yes. So I think that this is a great way to kind of help with that filler. It helps get rid of some of the branches and stuff that you have in your garden or in your yard to kind of help do that. Some people ask about termites. Termites aren't really going to be an issue. They're usually going to go to deadwood, and they're usually going to kind of be out and about, so you really don't have to normally worry about those too much. Because I know some people have had questions about, well, are termites going to be in there if I do this? And usually no. So
right. Well, and again, it's an organic material, so I know one of the trends, or one of the things that a lot of people do, is in regular containers, you stuff the whole bottom of it with pop cans or plastic water bottles and those kinds of things, which again is a filler. And then those plant roots go into it, and you pull the plant up, and here comes this ridiculous mess of things that you can now no longer recycle because they are so filthy. So it'll be intriguing to see how well this works for you and how much settling there is.
I'm excited to watch their progress and to see, because like you said, we didn't do this in the backyard farmer garden. We got some settling just because of just the weight and everything.
Right.
But I'm anxious to see how well this does. And I think that for them, not having kind of that constant management that, you guys are going to be kind of changing people, that those branches and those logs and stuff actually will maintain and hold water when they start breaking down. So I think that will actually help you in the long run, especially with this kind of a public kind of, who knows who's going to be taking care of it each time. So.
Well, and again, the cardboard layer, we have used newspaper, which of course very few people actually have anymore. But the cardboard layer would be a good, as you said, weed suppressant,
Yep.
and then also break down. I wonder whether you will get, coming up from beneath, those nice little vole, ground squirrel critters coming up the sides and through it.
Yep, I left them a little treat for that too.
Oh, we won't talk about that, will we? Perhaps a cat?
No, no.
No.
Some screening.
Oh, did
We
you
put
screen
some
it, hardware
screen,
screen?
Yeah, which we didn't even think about anything like that.
Well, I wish I would have thought of it in mine at home because I did not. And yes, something comes up and a plant disappears.
Really?
Oh yeah, out of
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Yeah. So you mentioned the mix of compost to topsoil, and we did get an interesting question on that. Is that by weight or is that by part? How do we? Is it like 1 part compost to 3 parts soil? What do you recommend for a bed like this?
Those are always done by volume or parts. So you look at this piece is a little bit over 50%, and this piece is a little under 50%, and that's going to be that 60-40 mix.
Right. And then we also have people who wonder whether they can, is it better to buy bagged in this situation or go get, I think Lincoln has Lingold still, or some of the compost that's developed. Any difference other than maybe knowing what's in the bagged material? Sometimes it's good, and sometimes we open it and it's filled with all sorts of strange things.
I think that I always tell when I teach containers and stuff to my master gardeners, I always say I am the most frugal gardener ever. So but I will spend money on soil because that is really the most important piece of building that garden. And that's the same with these raised beds. So if you're going to go and buy that 50-cent bag of compost, just remember the results are going to be worth 50 cents. If you're going to go buy that $5 bag of compost, then those results more likely are going to be worth $5. So it's always kind of like the when we talk about digging a hole for a tree, you dig a $100 hole for a $10 tree. Well, you're kind of doing the same thing. You want that soil because that's where all your plants are going to grow. That's their home.
Right.
So you want your home comfortable. You want to make your plants home comfortable. So going and getting good compost, I always say that nobody can drive a skid or a forklift, so there's always a bag broken somewhere. So you can kind of sometimes find, something coming out of it and see kind of how good it is. I've opened bags where there's mushrooms already growing in it, so that means it's been sitting outside and in the sun and in the heat and all that kind of stuff, and it's already breaking down, and that's fine because that's just what it's going to do anyway. But, a lot of times it's sometimes easier if you can go to one of those kind of big wholesale landscape companies to get it already done. That's going to save your back a little bit.
Perfect. So if we were going to leave our audience with 1 or 2 suggestions for what to do, how to get started, what would you suggest other than going out on trash day and picking up everybody's branches?
That's what we're going to do.
I think Pam needs to answer that because she's got the new garden. So
I think have a goal.
Right.
And be committed to it. That's what we've been really, who are the people that are going to be interested in keeping this going?
Right.
And get them involved with it. So if it's just you, really determine what you're going to use these for, and you have a focus for it, and then call Extension.
I love it. All right.
And have them help you.
All right. Well, thanks. And that is all the time we do have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. We want to say thanks to both of you for coming in, talking with us today. We will be back next time with another in-depth horticulture discussion. Do be sure to watch Backyard Farmer live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central on Nebraska Public Media. Thanks for digging deeper with Backyard Farmer.